position of education among the market, the third sector, and the government has been well discussed, debated. But how the role of the third sector may play in educational advancement has remained puzzling to all of us. Today is my highest and the most humbling honor to introduce our distinguished native Chinese keynote speaker, Ms. Shirley Pan, who is here. She will share with us the global CIES community, her practices, her experiences, of course, her critical reflections about what she and her team have been doing in terms of that. Please allow me to introduce the structure of the event first. So we will invite Ms. Pan to deliver her keynote speech over 40 minutes after my brief introduction. Then we will invite two distinguished commentators to provide their 5 minutes each, the comments. Then we will open the floor to accept questions. So I just want to introduce Ms. Shirley Pan. Ms. Shirley Pan graduated from Central University of Finance and Economics in Beijing in 1994. She also earned her EMBA in the Changjiang Business School in China. But she quit her professional work from the business sector and started her charity work for education 15 years ago. She was convinced to support teaching much needed life skills to deprived children in rural schools. Since the inception of the Adream Foundation, founded by her, that's in the year of 2008, her team has funded over 5,000 dream centers across the country, and it benefited around 6 million students, mostly from underdeveloped regions in inland China. Backed by the support from many funders and also governmental agencies who shared the same vision with her, Adream has offered a wide range of professional development opportunities to more than 120,000 teachers to help them make the most out of the Dream courses and centers. With the vision of enhancing equitable quality education for all, Shirley Pan and her growing team aim to inspire confidence, composure, and dignity in China's future generations. Ms. Tan, please.
Hi, good morning. President Lee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. What an honor it is to join all of you at CIES 2023. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this important event. My name is Shirley Pan, the founder and the chairwoman of Adream Academy based in Shanghai, China. My colleagues and I traveled 28 hours to get here, eager to learn from you and to also share with you our journey and experiences in improving education for a more equitable world, specifically in China. In the last 15 years, we have been working with the government, businesses, and the normal universities to reimagine and redefine education for disadvantaged children in rural China. And over the years, we have made substantial progress in thousands of rural schools across China. We are keen to ensure that this undertaking can continue to be impactful and sustainable in the future. For me, more than the hardship of the traveling in post-COVID world is the challenge to speak in English. My courage comes from a quote by Nelson Mandela. He said, "When you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But when you speak to a man in his mother tongue, it goes to his heart." Indeed, going to the heart of people isn't easy, which is what I discovered 15 years ago when I was in Maerkang, a remote and isolated mountain town in western China. As part of my personal pilgrimage, I have been visiting Maerkang since 2002. Every year since then, for the next 5 years, I dedicated most of my free time there, studying with my spiritual teacher. During my stay in Maerkang, I had a chance to visit local schools and residents. It was astounding to see how poor locals, parents, and children view school education. I remember one day, during a long trip in a mountainous area, we put up by the roadside and kept the slide door of the van open for some fresh air. Suddenly, a sturdy young man with scars on his face and a dagger around his waist stepped into my car. I was a little bit afraid at first, but soon we started to chat. He was 19 and never went to school. Every year for 2 months, he collected caterpillar fungus to contribute to his family income. For the other 10 months, he stood there by the road watching cars pass. You know, China provides compulsory education to 158 million K-9 students, the largest students' population in the world. Yet no matter how well-built schools are or how much the government commits to education, there are always people turning their backs to education. So I asked the young man, "Do you want to go to Shanghai someday?" Many young people in China want to visit Shanghai, the largest metropolis in China. He responded, "I do, but for what and how?" All of a sudden, the bemused and timid look in his eyes jolted me into a new reality. Indeed, for what and how? Why do people struggle with education? Is there anything I can do for them? For decades in China, work on equitable education has been simply through giving the areas that lack of resources. Many players in public, private, and philanthropic sectors are involved to renew schools, to recruit and retain the qualified teachers, to improve curriculum and learning, and so on. But that's not taking the bull by the horn. If charities like us are happy going the old way of donating money and materials only and not bringing in more inspiring and fulfilling way of education, stratification is inevitable in our education for children. And intergenerational transmission of poverty can go nowhere but worse. Therefore, very early on, Adream had set a clear mission. We want to enable every child to grow up with confidence, composure, and dignity. Instead of helping the school kids up front, we focus on their teachers. Specifically, we give them competence-based curricula, much more sophisticated teacher training, and fresh ways of instruction. Today, Adream centers are established in thousands of rural schools. We call ourselves a lab for whole person education in China. For you to understand everything, please allow me to start with my personal life. I am a Beijing native, went to the best school, and got my first job in the financial services sector. For 13 years, I traveled the world to get my wealthy clients even wealthier until 9/11, the terrorist attack in 2001. You know, that morning of September 11, we were on the flight from DC to Los Angeles. Shortly after airborne, the cabin radio sounded, "Hijack, hijack." The flight immediately returned to Dallas, and flight AA-77, which we were supposed to take that day, crashed into Pentagon. We were spared from the tragedy. 10 months later, I was in a car accident in southwest China. The van I rode in fell off the cliff and crashed onto the narrow ridge below. In traumatic pain and confined to my hospital bed for a month, I wondered why in less than a year had I encountered death twice and survived. During my hospital day, I read 2 books. One was Chasing Daylight by Eugene O'Kelly, which he started to write 3 months before he died of cancer. He said, "We had a fragile life and fleeting moments. If there were only days left, how could I spend them in the world?" The other book was the Tibetan book on living and dying by Soja Guru. To me, that's exactly like the Divine Comedy by Dante. Aside from examining how to die in peace, it confronted me, what would you like to see inscribed on your gravestone? I had no answer at that time. So I became a Buddhist. I relocated from Hong Kong to Shanghai and worked in a fund management company selling mutual funds to young parents. Whenever possible, I'd visit my spiritual teacher in Marikang, his hometown. There, in addition to religious study, fieldwork also took me to local schools and families. That was when I ran into a 19-year-old young man on the roadside. On that day, I had asked myself if there's anything I could do to change things for the better. There, driven by my belief, professional learning, and compassion, I found the answer and wrote it down on my future epitaph. So I quit my high-paid sector to start a charity in the summer of 2007. I gave it a name which translated literally into True Love for Cherished Dreams. That name abbreviated to Adream. At our humble start, we just dreamed of building a library in each school with brightly painted walls, lots of new picture books, and access to internet, so kids could be interested in learning and feel empowered to dream. Not surprisingly, we decided to call this place a Dream Center. The first Dream Center was established in Marikang No. 2 Junior Middle School. I remember its day 1. how the kids swarmed in, reached for the bookshelves, grabbed the book, stood right there, and read it out loudly. They were dressed colorfully and danced round and round. At that very moment, I marveled at how all my efforts in the previous 6 months, planning and building the center, had paid off so well. Faith led me to this wonderful journey. Over the years, I visited many more places across China. In just a few decades, China has built the world's largest primary and middle school system to stay in line with its fast-growing economy and fast-evolving society. Such progress is unrivaled in recent history of global education. But the global ways to understand how our basic education performs have remained limited too, mainly through how Chinese students do when they study overseas or from the results of international surveys such as PISA. In PISA 2018, participating students from the top Chinese cities of Beijing and Shanghai, as well as provinces of Jiangsu and Zhejiang, performed admirably. Yet the gap in education between rural and urban areas remains significant. Those at the bottom suffered not just in terms of school conditions, but more in teachers' training. As city schools in China move towards competence-based learning, rural ones are still stuck in rote learning. Such test-based learning puts a lot of pressure on everybody, students, parents, teachers. One of the results was Chinese students spend disproportionately longer hours to achieving their academic performance. To follow the magic wand of Gaokao, which China's grueling exam for college admission, most of them could care for nothing but academic performance. Why did the PISA report say our children were far from happy in their school life? Excessive amount of homogeneous study has stood in the way of quality education with little regards of students' personal interest. The government hasn't been sitting idle, though. Education reform have been taking place all the time, especially the two recent ones in the new millennium, both related to curriculum. The first reform in 2001 centered on the curriculum for basic education. The second reform in 2018 was more comprehensive with a clear vision of develop the core competence of students. In that set of curricula, core standards, textbooks, we see a clear shift from knowledge-based education to competence-based education, and from growing the academic performance of students to developing a whole person education. From the double reduction policy to keep off campus tutoring at the Bay and school from assigning too much homework for their students, to yet another curriculum reform package kicking in last year. We see the country stepping up its sovereign power over the education and trying to alleviate test pressure on our students. Of course, the larger force driving us were national campaigns by the government. Ours are at best a small addition to the whole system. Okay, back to building the dream centers. You see, to dot our vast hinterland with dream centers, we have to raise a lot of money and convince the donors that Adream is their smart choice, charming, cost-effective, and scalable. Trained in the business world, we decided to borrow a business-savvy approach to run it like a McDonald's. To be cost-effective, we standardized the construction process of dream centers into 12 steps. This means all materials for one center could be packed into 3-ton container and delivered door-to-door to any school in the country. And to achieve the scalability, we gave VR instructions, so the schools could assemble everything themselves. That strategy brought a rapid development. The time to build one center has come down from half a year to about a month. Here's a lineup of our interior design, updated every year and a half. We improve it constantly to serve the students best. You may ask why donors willing to donate to Adream for many years. You see, there are approximately 207,000 primary and junior middle schools in China. We have spent more than $2 million bringing Dream centers to 5,000 schools. Approximately over 5 million rural students have benefited from our project. The money covers the hardware, software, and a 5-year term of service. In other words, we serve one child for $3 to $5 one semester, depending on the size of the school. Donors are very happy with such economy of scale. They're also happy because from day one, Adream is determined to keep uttermost level of transparency. Our high standard information disclosure stands at least the charity sector in China. We are also the first charity certified in China by SGS, global benchmark for quality and integrity. Okay, so much for the charity part. Let's go back to improvements in education. Looking back on the past 15 years, we have worked as one of the catalysts, bridging the public, private, and philanthropic sectors. We took pride in inventing the PPP-SS partnership model. In addition to mobilizing the power of Triple P, they are also the double S, schools of high learning and schools for kids. In other words, higher learning institutions and research organizations to join us in helping rural schools. Here's the chart of how the model functioned in PPP-SS. The government gave us money and policy in exchange for our help with local education. And donors contribute funding and sometimes volunteers. Scholars from the universities turn their research into actions, massive enough to benefit needed kids around China. Adream is devoted to dream coming true by connecting the dots and making wonderful things happen on a sustainable basis. It takes a book to fully explain that chart. If you guys are interested in knowing more about the model works, so please come to join our sub-panel tomorrow afternoon. Now, by utilizing our vast network of collaboration, Adream is literally everywhere in China. Let me explain in detail why and how that happened in our 3 phases of educational improvement. Remember what we had for the first few of our Dream centers? Colored walls, books and computers, a comfortable place, and read and relax in a caring environment. Our kid needs to be loved in school before they love school education. But unconditional love, not linked to academic performance, has been a luxury on Chinese campus. For years, spirals of fast growth in economy and society have geared us more for utilitarian education and cutthroat competition. Many people are impoverished in love, but this man, Professor Cui Yunhuo of East China Normal University, was different. ECNU is the second most prestigious school for future teachers in China, and Mr. Cui is Dean of the Curriculum and Instructions. We were totally strangers in spring 2008, both visiting the Statue of Liberty on the ferry near Manhattan. I was pitching to a potential donor, and he was traveling with his faculty. As I talked, Cui stood behind my friend and overheard our conversation. He was intrigued by us but also somewhat concerned by our level of expertise in education. Upon return to China, he sent me an email and we met in his office right away. 4 months later, Professor Cui took his time out of his busy schedule and visited Markhang. At our prototype Dream Center, he asked me, "Shirley, it's a beautiful classroom, but classroom itself isn't education. You need dream courses and curriculum." I am most grateful to Professor Cui and his entire faculty. Without them, our dream centers couldn't have evolved into a leading lab for holistic education in China. With their support and assistance, dream centers coming online later on were no longer rural libraries, but a special classroom. That one, the updated Dream Center was very well received. In Dream Centers, we don't have a podium for the teacher, not even a blackboard. That means teachers are more facilitators than instructors. So we are special in styles. How different are we in substance? On the making of whole person, we put together 30 courses along the line of 3 fundamental questions: who we are, which way to go, and how to get there. Starting from scratch, our very first courses focus on reading, self-expression, and financial literacy. But these kinds of classes are not easy to teach. Perhaps to you, there's nothing new about student-centered class, but most Chinese rural teachers weren't experienced with it back then. So here's a short video of financial literacy class in our early days. Through retail, auction, and share wishes by group study, the whole class had a better understanding of money and wealth. Okay, you see the young man teaching in the class. His name is Xu Feng. He's excited by the class as much as the students. But before we met, he was bored of teaching and about to quit his job. In the video, you can see he was fully back in love with teaching. Now, working with a large group of advocates, Adream has grown at a greater speed. In 2011 alone, we put 229 dream centers in place, equivalent to our total number in the previous 4 years. That number almost doubled in 2012. our mission and good work have breathed new life to rural education. Tens of thousands of rural teachers are dedicated members of our loving community, just like Xu Feng. From learning space to curriculum, regional support and teacher participation, people who saw positive change have turned their worry about Adream into appreciation. Our vision inscribed on the back wall of each Dream Center, which is for every child to grow in confidence, composure, and dignity, has never failed to inspire anyone once they had sit in the Dream Centers. As we rallied support for Dream Education, our office in Shanghai started to receive government visitors and ranking officials from hundreds or thousands of miles away. One of them is Wang Zhifeng, from the Chinese version of Salt Lake City in Shanxi province in northern China. He said, "Shirley, I need you to build 100 centers in my district, and could you do it within 1 year?" He asked me in the first conversation. I was startled by his ambition. At our capacity back then, 100 Dream Centers will take us nearly 10 years to build. No, he refused to accept this timeline. We can wait, but our school children couldn't wait. Wang convinced his colleagues that the local government should provide most of the fundings and favorable policies to make it a success. With such passion and persistence, we covered all the K-9 students under his jurisdiction within 3 years. In addition to our initial success, we had our growing pains. Because of donors' preferences, our Dream Centers were scattered far apart in the countryside. Soon, they will outgrow our capacity to operate them. So in phase 1, we have our mission statement, build a loving community, raise an idea of PPP-SS partnership model, and finish building 800 Dream Centers for about 1 million rural students. But we also suffered a little bit growing pains, realized love alone isn't enough for the education. So we need insights and more study on the science of education. So here's the dilemma. If we really cared about children in need, we shouldn't give up any chance to expansion. But our commitment to quality also means we shouldn't expand too fast. Were we going the right way? Or we give this and that, but have we truly improved rural education? Where's the balance between speed and quality? How could our operations be standardized nationally and differentiated regionally? We decided to run a much-needed, although very costly survey in phase 2 of our improvement plan. In 2013, we invited a Rural Education Action Program, co-sponsored by Peking University, Shanxi Normal University, and Stanford University, to carry out a complete evaluation of our program. That marked the start of our rich experience working with the academic sector. Altogether, 166 sample schools from 13 counties were involved in its quantitative research. The REAP survey stayed on watch for 3 consecutive years and made a watershed in Adream. It found an increase in students' awareness of power, which was attributable to the Dream classes, where teachers strictly played facilitator roles and led the class to free discussion among students. It also reported a positive contribution to students' math performance and financial literacy. But why did our 30 courses only bring 3 signs of improvement? After a lot of discussion over the REAP survey, we realized all our courses needed to be remodeled one by one under an integrated system and reordered into 3 blocks: critical thinking, social-emotional learning, and project-based learning. That brought us three folds of improvements. One is a clear-cut outline of Dream curriculum. 2, competence-based objectives for each course. And 3, teaching plans for each course. Professor Cui Yunhuo again led his team to play a key role in helping us clarify the course purpose and put all the blocks in order. In each of the 3 blocks, we highlighted 2 to 3 courses, developed the modeling separately, and traced their feedbacks one after another. One of them, Dream Journey, has been trending positively for a decade. It's a project-based learning course for students to learn and plan their travels in groups. For 18 class hours, students learn the basics of travel. Every 6 of them make a study group. Together, they will make a plan to travel for a week in a city 1,000 kilometers away from home. They had a tight budget to keep and no parents around. And mostly, teammates to rely on for the whole trip. Every summer since 2013, hundreds of students groups from the disadvantaged family backgrounds have tried to learn by traveling the country. So here's a video of how serious and cheerful they were on the way. Okay, now remodeled, it is easy to track impact of the courses. Here's the radar map that our evaluation agents produced. It monitored 9 areas of competence with their changes after the first semester of instruction. The treatment group is in blue and the control group in orange. Between them, we can see remarkable differences in 5 areas. Other START courses, such as Science Maker in the category of project-based learning, Love and Dream in social-emotional learning, International Understanding in the critical thinking category, have also had independent evaluations and shown a clear rise in the core competence of our students. We admit teaching Dream courses hasn't been easy. Now, teaching them to prescribed effects is harder. We created Adream Academy, a standalone teacher training institute for grassroots teachers to go through 5 levels of proficiency training on a regular basis. The Ministry of Education has been very positive about our work. 3 years ago, it certified the Adream Academy for advanced teacher training on a national level. So, in our phase 2, we sorted out our course issues and create a vast collaboration network as hundreds of county governments have come to partner with us. A well-functioning PPPSS model have come to ease our growing pain. With more and more local governments throw their weight behind us, we took big stride in trust building in public, private, philanthropic, and academic sectors. In 2 provinces, authorities have welcomed us to all of their primary and junior middle schools. You see, 15 years ago, we struggled on the village level. Now things are still hard, but we have climbed the ladder to work on a total coverage in a few provinces. How could that be possible without the trust and appreciation? In recent years, we have survived in the economic slowdown and the COVID pandemic. The growth in our number of dream centers has stabilized at an addition 500 or so every year. Despite of the disruption by pandemic, some regions such as Yanhu, the Salt Lake District, are been doing exceptionally well. I hope you still remember Wang Zhifeng, right? As I mentioned in phase 1, he wanted every school to have a dream center, and we made it within 3 years. Now, 10 years have passed. Wang Zhifeng has been promoted, and his successor changed a couple of times, but that district remained committed to dream education. In fact, we renewed our framework in the New Deal, so Adream Academy could carry on with our good work. For example, our Master of Education Administration program for the headmasters was so cool that the local education authorities could seek our advice on who's going to be the next headmaster, school by school. With mutual trust growing, collaboration deepening, and advanced in curricular integration and subject research, Yanhu has led a pack of 900 districts and counties working with us in China. We invested a lot in Yanhu, wishing it could be an answer to the daunting question. In our quest for equitable quality education, do we have the balance between quality and speed? We don't know yet. So we embarked on another major survey, APEX Action, which is a 3-year look into a development level and official support in 7 regions under watch. Benchmarks including motivation, consensus, action plans, standardizations, and sustainability. Here are some of the initial results. All the studies and research are intended to help us better understand the dynamics in terms of school improvement or involvement and official decision-making. Above all, how do we get teachers, schools, and regions in the right mindset with the right preparation for voluntary actions? We invested in advanced peer coaching so teachers and regions could serve their own needs. We joined the prestigious Beijing Normal University to create a successful profile for school headmasters. We go side by side with the Shanghai Normal University, so undergraduates are better prepared to be the future teachers. And we work with the Ministry of Education to reinforce the teachers' training school in remote counties. Adream is successful only when each and every one of the schools we collaborate with is successful. Well, so much for Yanhu on the district level. Let me give you a different example on provincial level. In central China, Jiangxi province, a top producer of porcelain, Jiangxi is a hilly place with the land size of Portugal. It has a K-9 students population of 8 million, equal to that of the Argentina. We started to explore Jiangxi little by little since 12 years ago. Now the provincial government has decided to make the whole province a pilot base for dream education. Long story short, we are taking 4 years, a $30 million budget to build 100 dream centers together to effectively cover the whole province. Now, 3 years into the program, we are trying to assess the impact of provincial coverage and evaluated the program with the example of one place. We picked the city of Dexing, where we gathered data on 5,500 students from 35 schools impacted by dreams education. Across 2 consecutive semesters, among all the promising indicators, across the most heartening of the all was that we found students from less privileged families made faster gain in their competence than their classmates. It's encouraging to see our marginal intervention in limited hours of school time have contributed to shaving the peak and leveling the valley, or reduce the negative impact that wealth gap has in education. We are planning to track it in more areas over a longer period. So in phase 3, which is still ongoing, we measured our midterm impacts on a selected number of areas, tried to be balanced between quality and speed, and wished to get teachers, schools, and the local governments capable of voluntary actions. So improvement in equitable quality education is possible in the long run. So ladies and gentlemen, Adream provides children with rich educational content and an enjoyable way of learning, helping them to see the purpose of learning and enjoying the wonderful school life. We wish them confidence, composure, and dignity now and in the future, regardless of who they are, what family they come from. Here's the big takeaways, if you will. Adream spent the first 5 years building a loving community of advocates. The next 5 years, we aimed our dreams more clearly and built a big network of collaborators. In the most recent years, we worked on the will and power of regions to take voluntary actions. The quest for equitable quality education cannot be done overnight. From strategy to practice, we evolved constantly for real improvement in a better quality and competence-based education. Throughout the world, we all have our fair share of problems in education. Needless to say, numerous setbacks stand behind each success. I am extremely honored to share with you our case and would very much enjoy all the inspirations coming from each one of you, the CIES community. Finally, let me repeat. True education is a wake-up call of love. We get educators up, support them, trust them, empower them with love. And they come to better understand the basic education bears the key role in awakening the life purpose among children. In my office, I'd sit in front of a small map of China to admire the pathway of Yellow River and the Yangtze River as they zigzag to the big seas. The battles for the equality and the improvements of education are exactly the same. Some changes are so gradual, often to the limit of our patience. But we don't have another choice, do we? All the twists and turns will have to serve most people well eventually. To me, educational improvement takes decades. They don't happen overnight. But worry not, we have a lifetime to dedicate. Education concerns every child and requires never-ending love. It certainly reminds me of the epic movie, Cloud Atlas. Let me quote, "Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future." Thank you, CIES, for this opportunity to share with you our journey and the lesson learned. It's a long one, and I made it. Cheers.
Wasn't it amazing? Thank you so much for this wonderful and inspiring talk. Now, please allow me to introduce our two distinguished commentators. First, Professor Dr. Jinhuan Shi. Dr. Shi is a professor at the Institute of Education at Tsinghua University. She serves as a deputy chair of the University Degree Committee and the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Chinese Education. Her focus has been on higher education, especially her recent efforts in a nationwide study on China College Student Survey, CIES, over the past 13 years. She is a well-recognized and widely published scholar in China, but I just want to add one more personal touch. She has been an activist in promoting girls' education in China. She serves on a council member of the Beijing Western Sunshine Rural Development Foundation. And that has been her work for many years, as far as I know. The second distinguished commentator is Dr. Scott Rozelle. Dr. Rozelle is the co-director of the Stanford Center on China's Economic and Institutions. She's also a senior fellow of the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies at Stanford University and Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research. Professor Rozelle's research almost exclusively focuses on identifying interventions for improving the human capital of rural communities in China. He received his BAs from the University of California, Berkeley, and his MS and PhD from Cornell University. His research has been published in top academic journals, including Science, Nature, the American Economic Review, and the Journal of Economic Literature. Previously, Professor Rozelle was a professor at the University of California, Davis, and an assistant professor in Stanford's Food Research Institute and Development of Economics. His work has won him recognition inside and outside of China, including the Distinguished Friendship Award in 2008, AAEA Fellows Award in 2009, and China's Top Science Collaboration Award in 2018. Please allow me to invite our two distinguished commentators, please. Also, we try to overcome language barriers. We have invited two consecutive interpreters for the session. So we will have 5 minutes for each commentator. So I would like to invite Professor Shi first. Also, our online participants, please do type into your chat box so that we can take your questions.
Okay, I'm quite moved by the talk given by Shirley Pan. When I heard the stories she talked about herself, her organizations, my mind is full of pictures and memories. I think Shirley represents thousands of young people, not only in China, but also in the part of the world, who have a well-off family and well-educated and also a well-paid jobs. But in certain time or turning point of their life, they change their lifestyle and becomes so interested, so involved in the field of rural education to change the life of the disadvantaged children. I want to use 3 words as a comments and also some questions. One is dream. You know, he mentioned about the name of her organization, a dream, and in Chinese character also have true love, which all the metaphor in Chinese context, education. Education means dream. Dream is a hope, is the meaning of the life. It's something which for people to pursue maybe the whole lifelong. So education is to provide the dream for the children. And in some remote area, maybe school is the only place for the children to have dream, to think about something different with their everyday life. So education is to stimulate the dream and to help these children to make the dream true. The second word is reality. You know, dream education, as she talked about, is not just a dream, it's action. Action always rooted in reality. Dreams always rooted in reality and happened in reality. And in her case, actually aim at changing the reality. So there must be many challenges as she shared with us. So reality in China means great diversities. You know, some foreigners think China is highly centralized control, but in reality, with great diversity, rural to urban and east, west, and coastal, inland, so many big diversities. You cannot copy one model everywhere. You have to be flexible and respect the reality, different realities. And from her story, we see how they really based on the reality and targeting on the dream. The third word is bridge. I'm so impressed by the way, the relationship they had with academia, with government. You know, the advice and support they received from the professors, either East China Normal, Beijing Normal, and even Stanford and Peking University, are not just the personal friends. It's contract-based, professional, organizational, institutional activities. And the relationship with government, you know, for many people, NGO, tough, difficult. How they manage to keep that? So my question also goes with that. You know, you mentioned about PPPSS model, and you mentioned about, so the third word is bridge. Set up the bridge between and among the NGO or the charity with the academia and with the government. So really impressive. And as the agencies in China, what's the unique things make your unique or make your different? And thousands of charity organizations exist in China doing the same thing. And what the things make you organizations unique? And also looking for the future, particularly the global trend. What is the most important essence which you want to expand it and you keep and strengthen, and also not only contribute to China, but also the world? Okay, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Shi. Professor Russell, please.
Okay. It's very nice to be here, and thank you, Junli, for organizing it, and for Shirley and his group. I'm an economist, and we have a very difficult time talking without a PowerPoint. But I'll try to make these comments concise. First, what I want to tell people here is, there's only one Adream in China. It's a very special organization, and the people who work in the NGO sector, there are not very many of them. And the academic sector on these poor schools, there aren't many of them. Respect and have learned so much from Shirley and her own group. So thank you, and keep doing it. In my role as sort of the leader of Rural Education Action Project, our Stanford program that basically we're like JPAL, right? We do randomized controlled trials or comprehensive surveys of programs or investments and see if they work or not. And we work with local school districts, choose 300 schools, not for 15 years, but for 1 or 2 years, and do the baseline in the 300 schools, and then we'll randomize into 3 sets of schools. And for example, right now we're a big issue is mental health and in schools, and in 100 schools we'll train the teachers to give a thinking positive course, and another one they take an online course from a recording, and then there's the control group over here, and of course then we come back 6 months later, a year later, and see if it affects their mental health and if it increases their learning or what happens to their learning. And we've done a lot of these, and we find our biggest sort of challenge is getting the schools to cooperate and to continue and to push through and to comply. Let's just make it. We spend an enormous amount of effort. We're economists. We pay people to do it, right? We then monitor them to do it, right? And even when we do that, and even though like this mental health in learning in rural schools program is a national Ministry of Education high priority, guess what? They don't do it, or not everyone does it. And what they say is, hey, look it, we have a curriculum to catch up. We need to teach a certain amount of math, a certain amount of science, a certain amount of language, a certain amount of English, and at the end of every week, they publish that these poor rural schools have to be at the same level as the rich provincial capital schools. And because there's one and only one high school entrance exam, which is even more competitive than the one and only one college entrance exam. And so we have to push yours off to the side. Okay, so that's our challenge. So what I want you, the question is, how do you get such great compliance? I just, and when you respond, Shirley, I'm taking notes. So, because I know that you've done that. We've worked with you, and we know the compliance you get. And so, that. The second thing, and then I'll quit, is what Shirley talked a lot about, this gap between rural and urban, and it's there. And over the last 15 years, the thing that they've done, the third thing that Dr. Scher's group has done and other groups have done, we've narrowed that gap. There's school free lunch programs, there's eyeglass programs, there's teaching teachers, and all these things. But doing all that, we've narrowed the gap from 2 standard deviations at 4th grade. That means the urban kids are on a 5th grade level and the rural kids are on a 3rd grade level. In the 4th grade. They're far, far behind. And doing all these things that the government has invested in narrows that gap a little. So what we've been doing is we've shifted 60 to 70% of our effort onto 0 to 3, early childhood development. And what we're finding is, if you, at the baselines when the kids are 3 years old, and now there's been 10 studies that have tested maybe 40,000 kids in 10 provinces, 50 to 60% of 3-year-olds have cognitive delays of less than 1 standard deviation, a social, emotional. 60% have one of a language, cognition, or a social emotional delay. 60%, and you know, the Chinese saying, at 3 you can see the future, right? That at 3, if you haven't solved that problem, the whole world has solved this problem, or is thinking about this problem, especially in the middle income world, Brazil and Colombia and Peru and Mexico. China hasn't done anything with this yet. Oh, there's been some randomized trials, and there's been some NGOs that have tried to roll this out. You teach teachers better than anyone. And they teach the kids.
Scott, you have 1 minute.
Better than anyone. This is it. Have you ever thought of trying to train the parents and train the parents to train the kids? And that's all my second question to you, because I want a Zhenai Mengshang for 0 to 3. So thank you, Shirley.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. Ms. Pan, please use 1 minute to respond to our 2 commentators' questions, because I really want to save some time for the floor and also our online participants.
Okay, in that case, I need some help from my translator, okay? 我先回答一下那个就是 Scott 的这个问题哈，0到3岁的这个培训和服务，在家长这个层面上其实是非常困难的。我知道在中国有不少 NGO 在做这方面的尝试。真爱梦想的优势是在于我们是在一个体制内，那教师是 central government， 应该说是它是有一个体制的，它是一份好工作。但是那些农村的家长，就是他们是很难被集中起来的，所以它的核心问题是中国的城市化，因为家长他离开了自己的孩子，所以他们没有办法去做好0到3岁的养育工作，所以这个挑战是整个中国所面临的工业化、城镇化所遇到的一个非常严重的社会问题。
Okay, thanks for the answer. Let me translate. Congratulations for the wonderful research you did on early childhood development. In China, we have the problem of left behind children. Parents working in the cities, so they don't have time to really take care of early childhood development. And given the fact that Adream is experienced in training teachers, it's a way different approach in tutoring parents.
OK， 史教授的那个问题，我想回答一下，是关于我们的独特性的事。其实就是我们有一个 PPT 可以投上去，就是我们的那个 PPPSS model。This model is I think it's very vital, actually. Every NGO needs to find their stakeholders. Who is the most important stakeholders to you? You have to make a good relationship with the most powerful stakeholders. So we did that. We listen, actually. We study the policy of the central government. We study the provincial policy and the county policy. So we study the policy and to see if the government want to achieve something. Okay, they want to achieve this kind or that kind of goals. So we have a plan for them, how we can together to achieve our mutual goal. So I think it's our uniqueness to explore the model, and this kind of model is operating smoothly in China right now. So I think every one of you to see who is important to you, so you have to work with them.
Thank you very, very much for the great efforts to save a little bit of time from our interpretation. Now, I just want to have the Q&A session for our audience today and also online. Any questions? Raise your hand, please. Just a moment, microphone arriving. Please keep it brief.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really admire the great efforts you do, and the rural education has become the most critical social issue in China. So I have 2 questions. As Professor Shi pointed out, like working with the government is very challenging, has a lot of difficulties. So my first question is, it seems for me the funding comes from the government, also provide the provincial policies. So my first question is how you can ensure the consistency of the provincial policy offered by the government, especially local government, and also the sustainability of the funding when the government change the leaders. So that's my first question. And my second question is how can you ensure the solely autonomy of the curriculum? Because as I'm thinking, for example, what if the government asked to incorporate some patriotical or ideology, moral courses in your program, and how can you respond to that request? And is your curriculum is more like a supplement to the national curriculum, or it is a solely separate curriculum from the national curriculum? Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Yu, please.
I understand.
Okay.
我先回答你第一个问题啊，就是我不能保证这个政府每一年或者是可以持续的给我们 funding. I can't assure that the government will provide funding every year. You know, the government officials often to transfer to another place. So, you know, you have to make the things happen in the district, and you have to assess your work and to give the report to the government that is really help the government to, for example, 就是它会持续的帮助孩子提升他们的核心素养。你要有证据，你要有数据去证明你这个工作是有效的。
Okay, there's no guarantee we can continue to have funding from the government. Actually, government funding accounts for a quarter of our total funding right now. And yes, it's hard to prove the efficacy of our program. That's why we did a lot of research, a lot of surveys all throughout all these years as evidence that we are doing quality job. And of course, the government is proactive in reforming the whole educational system for quality education and equality. And ours, we share exactly the same goal with those reforms. That's why we're working pretty well so far.
第二呢，就是我们其实从政府得到的资金占我们基金会整个资金的20%左右，它并不是最主要的资金来源，所以就是我们大量的资金来自于就是说 the business sector， 所以我们做很多 fundraising。所以为什么我们的这个 PPPSS 模式里面，我今天要专门讲你的透明度、你的这个公信力，这个变得非常非常的重要。
Actually, a quarter of our funding comes from the private sector, and we're also raising money from the donating public on the internet to make up for any shortcomings in our funding. That's also the reason I elaborate so much on the model of PPPSS model. It's a whole system, and everybody's efforts make part and parcel of the whole efforts.
关于那个课程，我们的 Dream Course， 它是放在学校的正式课表里面的。那中国现在的这个课程改革里面，它有10%到20%的课时属于叫做综合实践活动课程。同时呢，它现在的新的课程标准，它要求呢每一个 subject 每一个学科有10% class hours，you have to do the cross subject learning。所以我们的这个梦想课程，它就是放在这个综合实践活动课程和我们的跨学科学习的课时里面，所以它是在正式的课表里存在的。
For your information, our Dream course is strictly part of the official syllabus. It's part of the curriculum. And that plays also into the reform goals of the government. I would like to call attention to the curriculum reform last year by the Ministry of Education. For example, by the latest developments in the reforms, 10% in each subject, 10% of the class hours are now devoted to cross-sector, to comprehensive learning across disciplines. That's why, as I mentioned before, we shared the same goal with the recent government reforms in educational development.
Thank you very, very much. I'm aware that we already overrun. I'm sorry I have to close the session. I cannot take more questions. However, Shirley will be still with us at the CIES, so you can still exchange your ideas with her individually later on. Please allow me to invite you another round of applause to thank our keynote speaker and the commentators. Also, please allow to thank our two interpreters, Dr. Min Yu from Wayne State University and Mr. Lu Hongyong from Adream Foundation. Thank you very much. Excellent.